I think today the audience is kind of looking at getting some perspective on how investors think of funding, how they think of evaluating investments. And I'm guessing that in the entire funding continuum, getting the investment is just part of it, right? There's a whole journey which happens after you get the capital, which is perhaps more important than just getting the capital itself. So we'll cover some of that, but I think what they'd be most interested in knowing is, what do you look for in a startup when you invest? What are some of these key ingredients that kind of differentiate one startup from the other, where you'll invest or you'll not invest? So if each of you could give me the perspective.
Sure. So I'll go first. Great. So, after seeing a few thousand startups, what I've realized is it's not really that easy to draw a line saying these are the certain characteristics that you'd look for in a company. What I've figured out over a period of time is, the best you can do, especially in the early stages, because you don't have enough information. You don't have enough of a, lifetime of a company to draw conclusions, right? Is have some high-level understanding of, the company itself, the space it's operating in. So there are certain companies which are very, very specific to what they do. So these could be, like one of the recent companies we did was a semiconductor chip design company, right? When you look at a company like that, you clearly focus on the IP. That is more than anything, right? And at that early stage, IP is the only thing you have. You don't have business contracts, you don't have revenues, etc. When I would look at a company such as yours, what you do, right? At that point, it becomes more clear to focus on how you go about designing the product, what you as a founder have insights about the space. And of course, yours will also be the kind of a product which really sells, right? In the sense that you're providing a utility and people are supposed to pay for it. And even in the early stages, if it's like with 4 or 5 clients, I think that is one of the biggest metrics that speaks for itself. When you're talking about a different kind of a company, say a Flipkart or the likes, in the early stages, it's not the revenues or those things you look for. So it really boils down to understanding what kind of a company that you are building as a founder and focusing on what the important metrics there has to be. And that's how VCs look at it too. If I say 100K ARR is what is required, right? I'll have to wait for like 6 years before I can invest in a drug discovery company because they'll not make money in the first 6 years, right? So those things quite often change. What is very important is for every investor to know where that what bucket that company falls into and what kind of things to look for, and very important for the founder to also make it clear to the investor when they're pitching it.
Absolutely. Sajith, very insightful actually. Sajith, give me your perspective as well.
So I guess there are nuances which could possibly differ from fund A to fund B, etc. But broadly, I think all VCs look at broadly 3 buckets. And I think the first bucket, and possibly the most important bucket, is the team, really. Because, so just to give an example, teams get together and we may invest in a certain opportunity or a space. For example, take Grey Orange, the most successful one. They start out by selling educational kits, robotics kits for students. And it changed, right? And now what do? They do warehouse automation. So teams pivot. So teams first. How good are the people? What's their talent? What's motivating them? So that's important. 2 is really now it's a slightly broad bucket. So the opportunity size. And so there the product would come, the market, how big is the market, technology. So the combination of these 3, the product, market, technology, broadly defines the opportunity space. So you could have the greatest team in the world, let's say like really top 3 IIT, Delhi, Bombay computer science guys. But if they're looking at a very small space, you'll say, hey, so you want people looking on big spaces, and third is really very peculiar to our industry. And so sometimes investability becomes a factor. For example, if you are in a space and it's like for example, if very bright guys were to come today and say, I want to launch an e-commerce thing, then we would say, look, sure, you will make it work, but there is Amazon and there's Flipkart, okay? So investability becomes a factor because someone like us, we early stage. I don't know enough about 314. I should have read about it, but I think fairly early stage. So we look to Series A, B players to kind of validate our investments. And if they say, look, we're not going to touch these sectors, then we would really say that, okay, we'll invest in you, but who's going to take care of you going forward? So I think these three broad buckets, what we look for. Team, really, really, really critical. It doesn't matter if the team is great, if the opportunity is fine, we say, chalo, you guys will discover something along the way. 2 is the opportunity space, where the 3 parts, product, market, technology, and all 3 have to kind of merge. 3rd is investability, like, is there enough traction in the space, etc., etc.
So, I mean, funding in early stages, honestly, when I started out, it was a very private equity focused market. Venture capital has really picked up maybe in the last 10, 12 years, and it's really opened up. Not only is it just VC funding, which is perhaps your Series A, but also your early stage funding has come in, right? And a lot of funds started kind of focusing on that space. So while you have a lot of entrepreneurs here who are just starting out, how would you kind of encourage them to think of, what is the right time to raise capital? What should they raise capital for? So give them some insights on how they should think about it if they're just starting off. Okay. Sajith, you want to go first on this?
Sure. So, it's a good question because I think, and as with a lot of good questions, the best answer to really begin and say it depends. Okay, but I should also get a little more clarity on that. So I think a good time to raise money is really when you need it. So now let me say something. So we've had startups across various stages. We just got a startup which has built something over the last 5 years. Now is when they really need the money. 2, sometimes you need money. You need not so much money. You need a VC validation to hire talent. So we've had there's a bunch of 2 really super bright bits guys building a fantastic product. They bootstrapped it so far, and some angel money. But now they need VC money because they're saying, I missed out hiring a VP product or a CTO or VP engineering because he said, look, I lost him to Swiggy or something like that. So what do you need money for? So because we are not in the business of just money. If you just need money, there are other opportunities. You can talk to your rich uncle, you can talk to this thing. So VC money is what's called branded money. It's money which comes with us, So for Blume, it's money which comes with Karthik. For them, it's money which comes with him and a few other things, etc. So what we come is not just money. So don't look at us only when you're looking at money. Look at us when you need a few other things as well. Validation, help in building a brand, hiring, etc., etc., etc. So broadly, I would say there is no right time to raise money. You raise VC money when a few of these things come together, which is you need validation, you need money to scale fast, and when you know that, look, you've achieved product market fit, and now putting in money will help you accelerate faster. That's when you need VC money, I would say.
That's a good perspective. Since you mentioned when you started off, there was not enough investment opportunities. Right now it's a different scene, but that's the ecosystem has also matured in a very interesting way. So just to give you some numbers, Traction, I got this from Traction, which is one of our portfolio companies. In the early stages, when you're looking at angel and seed, right? Between individuals or institutional angels, whatever it is, there are about 700-800 entities that invest at that stage today. There are about 300 odd venture capital funds which come up to Series A, Series B stage. Once you get to Series D, Series E, it boils down to like less than 50, right? That's how it works in India. So it's like a very nice pyramid sort of a system, right? But at the same time, when you have 800 angels and seed investors, you have today 41,000 startups in the ecosystem. And last year we had roughly 800 deals, right? So while this number has gone up, the competition on the other side has also gone up. Yeah. And what we've realized in that case is the deals are most easily closed by 2 kind of founding teams. And going back to Sajith's point about how important teams are here, right? If you're a second or a third time founder, it's actually much more easier for you. Yeah. Because you've been part of the ecosystem, the access is not as much of a concern for you, right? If you're a first time founder, the ones that have done it very well, what we've realized is, at least in the early stages, it's very important to find the right kind of advisors, mentors, etc. The guys that help you get to the right kind of angel investors, right? Because with individual participation itself, putting together a 2-3 crore round is not difficult today. And the good guys know how to pick and choose the right angel investors, because those are the investors who give you access to the VC fund. So again, like Sajith mentioned a while back, one investor has to think about what kind of investors come in the next round. In the same way, the founders have to think how my current set of investors will get me to that next round, and that becomes very important. That is why certain investors are good with certain spaces. Certain investors are generalistic or good with certain stages. That's where that entire game is very well done. So where do you raise it from? It really comes to the point of who are the right kind of alignments for you in the investment ecosystem. When do you raise it? 2 times. One is when you want to raise capital. Second, when those right kind of people have interest in investing in you. So it's not as straightforward, but that's how it makes sense.
And it's an interesting point. I mean, taking off from what Sajith said, you said, I think capital should be raised when you need it. I mean, not all problems require capital. I mean, if you're a revenue generating business, if you're profitable, if you can scale at a certain level, but then it's how hard you want to press on the accelerator sometimes as well. Not all businesses can also grow that fast.
Correct.
I mean, they take a certain amount of time to mature and grow and kind of pick up speed. So I think, yes, it is a very subjective answer, but needing capital, knowing what to put it into is also as critical, because the moment you raise funding, there's a clock that starts ticking, right? Because there is an exit event that you have to plan for. And therefore, given that there is a timeline, that plan for getting that ROI has to be there, and how you're going to get that ROI out. So I think some businesses are guilty of raising capital too early, and some of them never end up raising at the right time and wait too long to raise it as well. So timing it also is a little...
I think it's a great analogy. So this is observer who works at A16Z called Benedict Evans. So he said something very interesting one. He said VC money is like rocket fuel. It's good for rocket ships which want to take off. It's not good for tractors or lawnmowers. But that doesn't mean tractors and lawnmowers are bad. Okay, so if your business is going to take off like a rocket, that's when you need this kind of this. So I thought that was a good analogy.
It speaks to the core of the... So actually, this is a good segue into my next question. You said something about what do you need VCs for, bringing in the brand, sometimes recruiting. So obviously, investors bring in a lot more than just the money, right? There's a lot of value you add to startups, you help them grow. So tell us a little about how you've worked with your portfolio companies, what you help them do, how they work closely with you, how do they grow with you? How does that work?
Okay. So our portfolio currently stands about 51 companies. The youngest companies are at the seed stage. The oldest are raising their Series C's or D's right now. So it's a big spread, right? What we've realized is most of these companies, in the early stages especially, right? The founders start a company because they have an understanding of a particular problem and a solution, and they know how to build that solution. If it's a tech founder who started it, they're very good at building the product out, getting it to the market, right? Can that tech founder necessarily do the accounting, legal, compliance aspect of it? I don't think so. I mean, I have a tech background, I still don't understand any of that, right? But what we've realized there is, if you ask a tech founder to take care of those things, it slows the tech founder down, it slows the company down, right? And not necessarily a tech founder, a business founder, if you ask him to take care of tech-related things, it will still slow the business founder down. So what we've realized is in the early stages of the companies, the biggest help you can provide is help them make these operations seamless, because when you see 50 odd companies, right, by default what are the biggest mistakes that happen. Easiest mistakes to make, rather, not the biggest, the easiest mistakes to make. If you can take care of that, that's a big burden off of the founder's shoulders. So in the early stages especially, that's the biggest thing. In the later stages, it's more about problem solving, because not every company gets to a Series C or Series D level. A lot of them sell off before that, a lot of them shut down before that. So with every unique company that gets to that stage, it's a new kind of challenge that the company has not seen before, that the investor has probably not seen before. So how can you just sit with them and solve that one particular challenge? So For the later stage companies, it's more deep problem solving. For the earlier stage companies, it's generalistic and as broad as you can be.
Fair. Sajith, you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So probably should start off by this. I think Karthik in Blume Ventures said it once that the difference between a consultant and a VC is that the consultant gives you advice and takes money for it. Whereas a VC gives you money and then gives you advice. So we are in the business of giving money to you guys and then giving you advice. So I think most of the times the advice is valuable and it's appreciated, but there are times when we get on entrepreneurs' nerves. And there are some entrepreneurs who say, stay away. And, but broadly, I think we are good at there as, we're not 3 a.m. buddies, but close to that. Maybe 11 p.m. buddies. Okay. So 11 p.m. WhatsApps or, just moments where you need a point of view. Okay, I'm planning to hire this person, or should I look at now expanding into this market or that market? Sometimes you need to connect into a certain industry.
Yeah.
Like for example, there's a founder of an edtech company coming and I'm helping him connect to Uber, this, that, etc., etc. So I'm doing all the intros because, So we do help on multiple fronts, but a few more structured areas. One, specifically a kind of a consulting, sort of mentor, consulting counselor, a second point of view, really, okay? Is where I think we're valuable. B, like Anurag said, and he said it well, that because you've seen 51, in our case 80 companies, you know some of the areas where they can go wrong and you can quickly counsel. The other one is really, we can help in recruiting because we can add that weight, etc. B, we can help in, for example, some of certain, not so much VCs, more Ps, but in biz dev. Yes. And so what we're doing at Blume is very interesting. So we have a division called Constellation Blue, which does pretty much what Anurag was talking about, that why should the tech person worry about, whatever, like, compliance and stuff like that. So we have a talent team there which helps hire. For example, InstaMojo, it's one of our successful companies in the payment space. They just had a VP engineering through our talent team. So then we have a team which does compliance, payroll processing, etc., etc. We're also planning to hire very soon a banker and as well as a biz dev person internally. So what we're trying to do at Blume is really create this full kit of services where people can come in and because fundamentally, if you don't do all of this, like in the US, for example, you can just plug into very successful established networks. There are mentors of all kinds, consultants of all kinds. India, there's so much friction. And so sometimes you want the entrepreneurs to just hack or build, okay? And we'll take care of all the rest. So those are areas in which I think a good VC can help. And I think a lot of VCs are moving towards that direction. Different flavors, So for example, Axel has a community person. Had Avinash Raghava of NASCOM to look after community. So for example, he helps them on the tech side. I, because of my marketing knowledge and all, try and help. Okay, so we do a lot of this. Not all is structured, but this is a different business, the people business. Some people don't need it, some people need it. So yeah.
Thanks. So actually you mentioned an interesting point as well, which is that sometimes there's a lot of friction that also gets generated, right? We've seen over the last few years, and maybe a little before that as well, some of these investor-promoter relationships tend to turn acrimonious as well, right? And things start to go bad. Over the past few years, we've seen some of these arguments even going public. Where do you think some of these relationships kind of break down, fail? How can you ensure that you have a healthy investor relationship with your investors?
Yeah. Okay. There are a few reasons that we've seen where things can become problematic, right? One is simply communication, right? And for many reasons. I mean, again, like Sajith aptly mentioned, it's a people business. Yeah. And people tend to misunderstand things once in a while. Not having enough proper communication is always an issue. The second is, with the rise of so much money in the venture capital community also, you have quite a lot of VCs out there today who probably haven't seen enough cycles, right? That's or don't have a big enough portfolio itself. So it's when you invest in a company and the company is growing well in its initial days, it's all rosy picture and everyone's happy. The real test comes when things don't go right. Right? How do you end up handling that?
Yeah.
If you have a portfolio where you have at least 10 companies where things haven't gone right, you understand, you get used to that. You realize it's fine. With most companies, it won't go right.
Yeah.
But if it's your first or second company in that case, then there'll be problems, right? And not always, but in some cases, there will be problems. The other thing is, how are the incentives aligned itself, right? I mean, even if a company is growing really fast, right? Sometimes when you see it's a much bigger pie than what you expected, one of the two parties might want a bigger piece.
Absolutely.
This
tends to happen a lot in structured investments.
Yeah, quite a lot. So that is where it's very important to to go back to your first question also, raise the money at the right time.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, if you're not raising capital at the right time, you end up raising capital from whoever is willing to give you capital.
Yeah.
That, in our opinion, is not a great thing. In our experience, hasn't worked out well either. So identify people early on you want to work with, build a long-term relation, and take only money from them, right? I mean, it's very important to know who are the people you are getting on the cap table, on your board.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that.
In the early stages, founders don't put a lot of thought to that.
It's because I think founders a lot of times perceive that they are the ones always chasing capital, so they feel that, okay, if I don't raise this capital, I'm going to miss out. No, I don't. I've seen very few founders think of the fact that it's important for the investor to fit your business as well, not just your business to fit the investor, because it could be that the view that your investor has and you have of your business are slightly different. It doesn't come out during the investment process, but as you season as a company, it actually, that gap starts widening.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing on that front, right? I mean, the number of startups in the ecosystem has grown at over 300% in the last 6 years, okay? Which means a lot more startups have come. We have about 4,000 to 5,000 new startups coming up every year, okay? And I'm sure Blume has very similar numbers such as ours, but when startups write to us, at least about 60% of the startups that we see are not that great. We pick and choose from the rest of the 40%. I mean, 40 is also being a bit more optimistic, right? But think about it on the other side, right? When you started off, there weren't enough VCs. Now there is an abundance of VCs, right? What does the percentage look like there, right? If you're saying 100% of the VCs are top of the class, then why are 100% of the startups not top of the class, right? So it's very careful. The same way investors end up being super picky about startups. So our average is somewhere around one company invested after 300 companies seen. So that's kind of the funnel. So I think there needs to be some maturity on the other side in picking the investors also that way.
True. So I just want to...
No, what he said, the last point, I just want to build on that one of the learnings that I got, and I'm a recent entrant into the VC business. I'm an media executive turned VC. And I was told that VC business is not about you picking the best deal, It's about the best startups picking you over another VC. And because you may be the best, suppose if I'm in the media space and I understand media, or he's in ex-education, edtech founder, someone picking him in the education space. Sometimes you pick the firm because of a certain person or various reasons.
Yeah.
So I would say the best investments that typically have worked out for Blume, we've always had to fight. Two cases. One, we have had to fight with other VCs to get in on the cap table. Fight means, making sure
compete.
We don't beat each other up.
Lots of secrets that I can't get into. The second one is when we have to fight ourselves, and a lot of the Blume deals, they fall in two categories. One, we either had to fight to get in the cap table, or the other cases, nobody wants to touch them. We are the only ones talking to you, and the entrepreneur actually has come back and said, if you had not done, I would have, I don't know. So sometimes you have to fight yourself. So there are these two kinds of deals, and now I want to kind of seg back into the larger question that you raised, which is about where do things go wrong? And I think he mentioned about communication, clearly communication, but let's take one step back. I think fundamentally there is a misalignment of expectations that is built into the structure of the Indian investing market between VCs. So, for example, at Blume, we've had companies exiting $8-10 million, let's say after having raised, we have put in some money and another $1-2 million. Great outcome for the entrepreneur. They get to make $2-3 million between the two founders, or $4 million. Some of the early guys make, that's a lot of money, 10-12 crores. For us, nothing, because the nature of the VC business is, it's a few of the large bets. Only when, for example, when a company exits $30-40 million, do we end up making money.
That's right.
So what it means is, and unlike in the US where $2-3 million is not enough for Silicon Valley, even Jack Dorsey has to have 2 jobs just to stay in Silicon Valley. It's a joke. Yeah. So and in India that's a lot of money. So at some point this mismatch is one factor as well, and I think that's per certain behavior. And like you rightly said, I think a lot of the VCs are young and they've seen kind of one, and it's when the going gets bad that you really kind of see. So I think things will change and there'll be much fewer and fewer. But end of the day, it's a people business. There will always be this friction and this one. And that's par for the course. So we shouldn't read so much into them as well. Yeah,
I completely agree. I think we're almost out of time, but I want to leave some time for questions. So does anybody have questions that they would like to ask any of us? Please feel free. Could we have a mic which could be given out? Any questions? Otherwise, I'll ask a couple more.
Yeah.
Anyone?
No? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So actually, I had a kind of, this worries me. I'm a tech product company, right? And I worry about how to grow and scale and raise further rounds of capital. And one of the things I clearly see is that if you look at history, India hasn't really produced any big tech products on the global landscape. I mean, I can maybe name 1 or 2 that really stand out. But India hasn't produced products that have scaled globally. Maybe in India they do scale, but you don't see them on the global tech landscape. Why do you think that is? I mean, what are some of the reasons? Should entrepreneurs be worried about that today? What do you think? Because you mentioned Instamojo. They're one of the companies who's started looking at a global landscape as well. So they're hitting up against this problem now. That how do you scale? Whether you raise capital only in India, do you go out? Do you become a global company? But it's not easy for tech companies to make it there. So what do you think some of the reasons are?
Yeah, so first principles, when you build for a market and then you build for the problems in that market, and then you build for the problems are only so much. So in India, we are a smaller economy than most countries, okay? And so that means that the problems that a startup grapples with here are problems that are endemic or unique to the Indian market, which don't tend to be that large. So historically, and it's not like the Indian entrepreneurs in the valley. There are a lot of products there which are built by Indian entrepreneurs in the valley, which have been large products.
Yeah.
So it isn't like that the Indians can't build. But Indians in India haven't built with ambition. And that I think is beginning to change in Blume's portfolio. And I'm sure it's common to all early stage guys, whether it's Pai Ventures, 314, etc., the technology investing firms. We're beginning to see ambitious founders emerge. Not necessarily second-time founders, first-time founders. They're building with ambition and scale because for the first time, thanks to DigitalOcean and many other products, cloud products, it's very easy to get started fast.
Yes. It's all one marketplace today.
Correct. Start off with a credit card, etc. And talent pools have emerged, etc. And a lot of VCs have also started being able to help. Like, for example, we've created a program where we send some of these startups looking at US-specific problems into the valley. We have partnerships, etc. So we've started doing that. And I think some of this is going to change in the next couple of years. For example, Grey Orange will become the first. We have Freshworks, Zoho to an extent, which are the well-known Indian product startup software.
Right.
But we don't have a hardware product yet.
Yeah,
so I'm hoping that Grey Orange will be the one. Then of course there are others. We have Trico in our portfolio. SigTuple will kind of emerge there. Lots emerging, and I'm sure there are some in the portfolio as well which will emerge. So some of that will change, in my view.
Anurag, you want to add to that?
So I'll address it in 2 different ways. One is, if you look at the way the ecosystem has turned up historically, right? I think 5 out of the 10 biggest tech services company on the planet are Indian. Okay.
Yes.
So you have Infosys, TCS, Wipro, all of those, right?
Yeah.
So are we exporting enough? Yes, we always have, right? The problem there, of course, has been that you need a certain kind of talent to build a services kind of company, right? The reason Silicon Valley is what Silicon Valley is because if I want to build the next biggest social network, I can just walk down the street, hire people who built the last biggest social network, right? You need to have that kind of talent.
Yeah.
If you see, we finished like one very good cycle here, whether it's 10 years of Zomato, 10 years of Flipkart, almost 8 years of Ola, things of that nature. You can hire someone who's built a Flipkart over the last 5 to 8 years and use it. And that's what we're seeing, right? That's what these founders, like Udaan is the company that came the fastest to $1 billion valuation, right? It's the first time occurrence because there was no talent like that before. Now we have that. Like going back to your first point, there was no access to capital before, right?
There wasn't.
So that in itself is a different challenge. Now we have capital. Now we have talent. I think now it's a very interesting position to see how this plays out. I think we'll have more of these very interesting. I mean, see, Chennai in itself is a big SaaS ecosystem today because Freshworks is out of there.
That's right.
You need someone to build that ecosystem out, right? You need role models. You need built and set practices to make that happen. People who will quit Freshworks would, at the very least, build a decently successful SaaS company, right? Even if it's not $1 billion company. So that in itself is a big thing. I think it's a matter of building the ecosystem out, having that kind of time for the ecosystem to mature. That's the first aspect. The second aspect is, I'm not sure if every company needs to go global. Okay, if you look at it, there's not a lot of parallels to the likes of Paytm or Alipay. These are mammoth companies just catering to one country.
That's true.
Right?
And those markets are large enough to
17% of the world population is here.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, why do you have to go somewhere else? I mean, just to give comparison, right? India's internet penetration is 35-40%. Okay? In absolute terms, that's bigger than the American population.
Yes,
right?
it is.
And you have like 60% still left to adopt internet.
And it's cheaper to consume data in India
Exactly.
as well. So
To give you numbers, like Daily Hunt, which is one of the biggest content platforms in India, right? They do 90 million MAUs, which is very close to BuzzFeed at this point. Their biggest was during some election point, and a day they did 500 million page views.
wow.
Okay, I mean, if BuzzFeed ever comes close to that, we'll talk about Daily Hunt going to the US. Right? But just by being here, they're exceeding on all metrics. So, in my opinion, going to another country is just an arbitrary vanity thing that you're thinking of, right? It's not necessary. In some cases, like Freshworks and all, pure SaaS play, there are certain markets which will have higher purchasing power, will pay more, makes complete sense. But
not all products are meant to go global.
Not
I
necessary.
agree.